The strongest force in the world, huh? Well, not to bring the room down or anything, but everything you have ever known and will ever know is going to die. Even things that aren't alive will die. The sun will burn out and swallow the earth, and eventually, the heat death of the universe will pass everything into a long quiet. I get a lot of aspen trees where I'm from, and one individual tree is not actually one individual tree. I live about 90 minutes away from Pando, the largest organism in the world, probably. There's a contender in Australia. An aspen forest is largely one singular organism. What we experience as distinct trees are actually just offshoots of an expansive root system. And this makes sense as a growth strategy. Leaf make food, make more leaf, make more big. Root drink water, make more root, make more big. But this kind of super organism isn't the only way this kind of growth is seen. A tree will almost always die when it is felled, and from there, the stump and root network will slowly decompose. It needs its leaves to convert light into energy, and without them, it's highly unlikely it has the energy stores to throw out new growth, especially not enough to support the needs of what's left of its roots. But sometimes, the stump will continue living. Nutrients will continue to flow through it. Given that a tree can no longer eat when felled, it needs to get its food from somewhere, and when it can't get it for itself, it gets that food from its neighbors. Trees communicate with each other through various ways. They can use mycorrhizal fungal networks, they can wrap their roots around each other in tight knots, and in some circumstances can graft their own roots together, opening a direct connection between them. When you look at trees that have married themselves in a chain, you can see that the stumps still transfer nutrients from one tree to another, making up a vital link in the chain. They transfer resources slower, but their contributions are still worthwhile. When the other trees are more active, the stumps are less so, and when the other trees are less active, the stump takes that time to use their resources to grow itself. From each according to their ability, to each according to their need, and all that. And so, no, the strongest force in the world is not death, because life can be so determined to spite it. Alright, so maybe everything won't die, but even if some things will live, all that fight was powerful too. When Oregon and California have their wildfires, I can see it in the sky, I can smell it. If death isn't the strongest force, maybe the destruction that leads to it is. The strongest force is fire, entropy, destruction. Except that some trees need fire to seed. You'll see pyrophilic pines and sequoia, cypress, spruce. They can't spread without wildfire and have adapted to that circumstance as part of their life cycle. So some species have staked their lives on something being burned down. But all plants are evolved to live in their native soil compositions, and those soil compositions are heavily influenced by fire cycles. When a plant grows, it takes nutrients from the soil around it, and until that plant dies, it has starved every plant around it. Without a recycling of that matter, nothing around it can take seed, and if nothing can be born, the ecosystem will eventually fail. Wildfire is the most common name for when large swaths of land burn, but that name implies that they are fires in the wild, or perhaps that they are wild in cause, neither of which are especially true. A lot of those fires were historically caused by indigenous tribes, and the land that they tended was not wild, they were its keepers. Those controlled burns were frequent, but their frequency lets them be less intense. In our current world, we are often forced to watch how powerful a massive wildfire can be, but that was held at bay by those who lived here pre-colonially, especially in the West Coast. It's estimated that around 4,500 acres burned yearly in the pre-Columbian Pacific Northwest, just shy of the 520,000 that burned in Oregon in 2021. But spread out, intentionally caused, targeting underbrush, those fires would have done far less damage to life, human or otherwise. Burning that area clear also had a lot of benefits to the people living there. Ticks and biting insects leave eggs over winter, and fires destroy those. Area is maintained as grassland that would otherwise be turned into forest, which allows the growth of culturally important plants. Camas being used in the Blackfoot, Cree, and Nez Perce, Yampa by the Yokuts. Karik basketry uses wildfire to prepare the leaves of beargrass. And so destruction is not the most powerful force in the world because life finds a way. Anything that can be destroyed can be co-opted for the sake of life. Life is in conversation with death, and that life has so far come out on top cannot be ignored. Other planets may be hotter and more deadly, but ours is the only one with fire. Fire cannot exist without life, as life creates the atmospheric oxygen necessary. So every living thing that you see is something that created the capacity for its own demise, and yet, to live on outstrips it still. The sun is a deadly laser that can scorch even across millions of miles. That sun, and every star we can see, was created by mass congregating over time, getting denser and denser until it ignited, bending space-time around themselves and dictating the paths of their planets. Even beyond that exist black holes, galaxies, everything held in place by the unifying power of gravity. On a macro scale of the universe, there is nothing more powerful than gravity. Okay, so can I just get excited about Artemis for a second? I was super into space as a kid. That's faded a bit over time. But by happenstance, I got to watch the live stream of the Artemis launch, and I then spent the next 10 days absolutely enthralled. We are going back to the moon. There have been so many pictures and artworks I've seen, but I'm just gonna share some of my favorites. This image shows every human that has ever existed. We're all in there. You could see every single one of us. All the Artemis 2 crew, all our cemeteries, the ISS, every city on Earth, all of us looking back up to integrity. We have the ability to go so far that all of us are visible. Our best can go farther than anyone has ever gone, and in deep space, see things nobody else has. The other image is this one, Exceeding Horizons by ateazure. I'll put some links in the description because they just put prints up, and everyone should give her money for this. The Orion spacecraft cuts through space, headed directly to the moon, launched by Artemis, holding a crescent of the Earth as her bow. Those astronauts soar farther from Earth than anyone else ever has because we launched them. Together, we built the rockets and funded the research and told the stories that sent us that far. NASA is filled with experts. Their crews undergo intense training and all are immensely capable, but they couldn't do it without us. We're the reason they go in the first place. Humanity was born and immediately started telling stories about the stars, who created them, how brave mortals can be placed up there, how they are kind and guide us to where we need to go. We've spent our whole life looking up, developing tools to look up better, and finally going out there ourselves. And as soon as we had the ability to, we tried to be heard and we tried to listen. Both Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are still moving, flying through interstellar space. Voyager 1 is nearing 1 light day away, and yet still we can hear it. Those probes have lost a lot of functionality, but they still send us as many signals as they can, and we are still listening. We loaded them up with as much information as we could, just in case that somewhere, in the infinite scale of everything, if there is anything that would notice, then it might cross their path. And so, even though gravity holds everything together and can create wells so deep that even light cannot escape, the strongest force is not gravity, because humanity decided to listen and to be heard, and as soon as it was possible, we left our own orbit. I've talked about wildfires already, and I've done it in previous videos too. Seeing the whole sky darken as your lungs fill with destruction from hours away is kinda scary. When I was a kid, a nearby mountain caught fire. If I had lived across the street, I would have been evacuated. My family sat in the front lawn and ate dinner, watching the planes and helicopters dump water and retardant. The field my sister played soccer at turned into their landing pad. If I look at that mountain today, 2 decades later, I can still see the stark cutoffs of the burned trees on the ridge. Later that year, my dad spent a lot of time running around throwing sandbags, trying to help keep people's houses dry. Because while one effect of climate change is scary on its own, the horror is in the cumulative. I mostly have to deal with fire, but that means that I also have to think about flooding. Texas can see its infrastructure damaged by the heat only to have that exploited by the winter. Here in Utah, rising heat means that conditions are more difficult to work in and it places more stress on the agricultural system. That stress requires more resources to deal with. In the case of agriculture, that means more water. More water usage places more strain on our natural water systems and lakes and reservoirs, which causes them to shrink, which then drains the lake, which is starting to spread toxic metals into the air and impairs its ability to moderate the heat of the area. This runs in a cycle, and unimpeded will continue and will be devastating. Across the world, climate change is causing storms to get stronger and more powerful, and more storms hit every year. Droughts get longer, temperatures get more extreme. Every year, climate disasters cause more damage. The cost of damages continues to rise. You would expect more people to be dying, but no. Since 1970, the number of yearly disasters has grown by a factor of 5. But the number of deaths has fallen by a factor of 3. And remember that there are more people now than there were then. If the number of deaths remained constant, that would be a success, because it would mean that the percentage of people who died would be going down. but still the absolute number goes down. In a time where we are getting hit harder and quicker and more often, we are also getting better at caring for our own. We aren't done. Disparities between who gets saved still exist, and we will have to reduce the number of dangers in the first place, but we are getting better. I, at the very least, have spent a lot of time under the impression that climate change is caused by greed. And while that is in part true, it is also unfair to say that that's the whole of it. Today, about 50% of Indians own a refrigerator, a percentage that the US was passing as we left the Great Depression. Half of American homes had a fridge by the start of the 1940s. That disparity is unjust, and every day that it continues is further injustice. But the refrigerator isn't a gluttonous invention, it's hugely practical. Most of us put food in ours, but so does your grocery store, and so does the shipping company. Our food system is massively expanded and more capable for refrigeration. We store vaccines and antibiotics in refrigeration, sometimes extending shelf life and sometimes allowing the medication to be effective at all. That makes refrigeration a necessity for a diversity of conditions, from autoimmune conditions to diabetes to eye conditions. So I personally likely would have been worse off without it. I don't know exactly what the ER put in my eye. I was otherwise occupied. Refrigeration is tricky though. On a materials level, you need refrigerant, which, while we are moving to safer chemicals, for a long time had to be chemicals with climate consequences, especially at scale. To distribute them, you need a large industry. You need to mine all those materials, and when everything is complete, for it to function, requires a stable, largely uninterrupted electrical signal. That's a lot of work to produce billions of products, but a lot of vaccines that require refrigeration are those given to children, meaning the refrigerator played a role in this graph. Are you really going to tell me that's not worth it? And so, while the cumulative effects of climate change rage, it's not accurate to say they're the most powerful. We started them to better care for our children, and we are increasingly getting better at dealing with them. As we pull ourselves into a more just world, we have to pull ourselves through emitting carbon. It's just kind of part of the deal. But we are working around that and expanding our energy sources, and we are getting better at caring for us. It won't beat us. We were always persistence hunters. And so, is human negligence the strongest force? How we can disrupt ecosystems without care, following our misguided care for each other? In Yellowstone, we killed all the wolves. We thought it would be safer. We thought it would be better for us. But we were wrong, and we could see that. We could see the forests and rivers change without them, and so we brought them back. And it's not as it was perfectly, but it is better. Yellowstone is headed in the right direction again because we made it so. American expansion westward and industrial farming destroyed the habitats of the whooping crane and thus their migration paths. Entire lanes of life were compromised, and so they were rebuilt. But the birds didn't return. They had the land space and ability to, but nobody had taught them their migration paths, and so they couldn't take them. So we dressed up a plane, flew it low and slow, and soon the birds knew where to go again. We destroyed so much of nature, but we rebuilt it. We rebuilt the planet, and we even rebuilt the birds' social structure. In Ethiopia, their Christianity leads them to build chapels in forested areas. Traditionally, this was done all over the place, and integrated into the landscape, you would come across houses of worship. However, they've seen a lot of deforestation. Much of what once was forest is now farmland, and you would expect these churches to suffer for it, and often they do. However, these churches were built together with the landscape, and so now they preserve it. Over swaths of desert, you might expect a green space to be a mountain or lake or river, but often it might be a church too. We fixed the acid rain, and we fixed the ozone, and we fixed the murder hornets, and we fixed... In Yellowstone, the wolves are back. In Ireland, they're still gone. Human destruction has done a lot of harm. But as far as the ills of the present go, there's very little we cannot manage. When we have the political or social ability to group together and combat these problems, we can fix them. And so the strongest force in the world cannot be human extraction because it is frequently undone. If you go out into a forest, you can still see light. It's shady, obviously, but the ground is not pitch black. Trees grow by consuming light, so why is this the case? Wouldn't it be the most efficient strategy to blot out the sun and take it all for yourself? As it turns out, well, no, it's not. Life likes to live in transitions between biomes, the border between a desert and the ocean, or a lake and a forest, or whatever. That places you close to two separate areas, which means you have access to things from both. When things get tough for you in one aspect, you have enough other options that maybe you'll be okay. Diversity is a benefit both for the resources you can access, but also if you live around other species. If you're a plant and you only have one pollinator, you're in trouble. If you spread to such a degree that the kind of animal that can pollinate for you is limited, you have grown so far as to make yourself vulnerable. Additionally, you won't exist as a fully grown plant your whole life. It needs to be possible for smaller plants to grow upwards. Otherwise, you seal yourself in as the final generation. So you need to leave air in the canopy and let others exist in your space. So trees leave spaces between them, between members of their own species or not. This phenomenon of trees leaving space is called crown shyness. Not every plant abides by it, but many do. For them, existing in community is the most effective evolutionary path. Where we might expect competition, we instead find cooperation. And so the strongest force in the world is not death, because life will always find a way to forestall and circumvent it. And it's not destruction, because life creates the capacity for destruction, and every day that you see life is a victory. And it's not gravity, because we wanted to communicate with something else so badly we left orbit. And it's not climate change, because we learned to protect our own faster than the storms grow. And it's not our own greed, because where we build to extract, we also build to protect. In each case, the thing that always comes out on top, the strongest force in the world, is love.
Because your love, your love, your love is my drug. Your love, your love, your love. Because your love, your love, your love is my drug. Your love, your love, your love.
Hi, thanks for watching my video. I hope you liked it. As corny as it is, I do think it is true. So, if you made it through this whole thing, leave me a comment about something you are excited about, something you're doing soon. I have recently been making attempts to be out in actual community, and I intend to continue doing a bunch of that, and I'm very excited for it. So let me know what you are up to, and I hope you have a good day and or night. Okay, thanks, bye.
Your love is my drug. Your love.